All right, here is your second Ross Fulton bonus show of the week. We're going to be doing a bunch of new shows with Ross coming up a little later on in the week. You'll see those in your feed in just a day or so. You're going to see them even earlier than that. If you're a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com, we'll have those up a little early on our members-only huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So if you want to see this stuff now, you can hop on our board, and it'll be up there shortly. It'll be up in the public feeds a little bit later on in the week. But for now, here's a little bit of bonus Ross coverage. This is a look at the Ohio State defense and how they did against Oregon out in Eugene earlier in the season. Now, this was a game that really kind of changed the Ohio State defense. They've made a lot of major changes to the defense since this game, and most of that has been for the best. So what went wrong for the Buckeyes out in Eugene, and then what did he feel needed to be changed at that time? And then we'll talk with him a little later on in the week about what they actually did change and how that's worked and why that has worked as well as it has. So here is a look at the Ross Fulton analysis of the Ohio State defense against Oregon from back in October. All right, I don't know if this is a show you guys have been looking forward to, but it's a show you guys have been asking for sort of indirectly, I think, ever since the Oregon game ended. We're going to be taking a look at the Ohio State defense, what went right, what went wrong against the Oregon Ducks. It has been a hot topic all week. We're going to have Ross Fulton, our X's and O's guru, on to break it all down for us. And when we have Ross on the show, we are proudly sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood, sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus today. All right, Ross. The attention to detail by the Ohio State defense, that may have been matched at times in the past. Things did not always go great, and there were things that they did that they were trying to accomplish things that everyone has been saying, why can't you do this more? And then when it doesn't work, everyone says, why did you do that? So one thing they've been looking to try and generate more of is pressure. And so sometimes to generate pressure, you got to take some chances. Sometimes that worked, sometimes that didn't. What did the Buckeyes do on Saturday to try and bring more pressure, more heat on Dillon Gabriel?
So we saw at least 4 to 5 times cover zero pressure schemes. I think to me, I'm guessing there is as you said, they want to try to create some pressure. The Oregon's track record this year, as we talked about going to the game, is a lot of short throws. So I presume the thought process was this is a way to generate pressure. Then we drop some guys into the underneath zones, take away the easy, quick mesh throws, crossers or outlets to the tight end that Oregon's relied upon. So win-win. And there's been a lot of discussion, at least I've seen on X, on Buckeye Huddle, others about the play. I'm sure everyone can think of it where Ohio State, quote unquote, brought 2 rushers and Denzel Burke got beat over the top. With right before halftime. So I'm going to get into that, but I want to start with what they used 3 or 4 times that was effective. That's a similar type of concept, which is train. We talked about train just last week. They ran it against Iowa, where they brought Caleb Downs up the middle. And they ran it a few different ways on Saturday. I grabbed the one here that was literally the play before that read pressure that we were talking about. And so, train, we've talked about, you can see it here. You basically you're trying to occupy all the offensive linemen. So you're bringing 6, right? So the offensive line has 5 to block them with. You want your 2 guys that are dropping to engage with the offensive line. That'll be important going forward. And so here, they're going to drop both defensive ends. They also did it with both defensive tackles. So they drop, or at least they feint. That is an issue. Instead of engaging, the defensive ends drop as rats. You can see everyone's in cover 1. Jordan Hancock follows the motion. That was another issue that Ohio State had on Saturday, particularly in man coverage, getting lined up, handling motion, especially early. You see a lot of guys kind of looking at each other, trying to figure out where everyone's supposed to go. Oregon used tempo effectively as well to cause problems. But so anyways, it works like it's supposed to here, right? Like you have again, the shallow crossing route from the tight end, Kenyatta Jackson dropping right into that zone. Jack Sawyer gets tripped up with the Oregon wide receiver. Gabriel tries to throw a dig route across the field. Davison Igbinosa breaks it up. So it works. So the second time in a row. Now, I think part of the issue here is, but you do see already on this play some of the issues that will come up on the replay, and it's not just the scheme, it's in the execution, right? Like, as I said, like the goal is to engage first with the offense. You have to occupy the offensive lineman so he can't redirect to the blitzer that you want unoccupied. And the defensive ends don't really do that here. The other issue is these are sort of plays that you can only use so often. It's, you're picking your spots, right? You want to show pressure or simulate pressure, if you will, but not always call it, right? So Oregon now has seen this. This is the second time, as I said. The very next play, you show it again, right? This time Jim Knowles uses the read concept. The problem is, again, first issue is Oregon, as I said, has seen this. So they're tired of throwing underneath routes. They can, Will Stein called a good game on Saturday. They get paid well too, right? So they make this, you can see right away, like on this concept. And before I get into the specifics of it, though, I want to say, like, this is a tried and true concept. This is not Jim Knowles drawing up in the dirt. Let's only rush 2 and drop 6 guys within 5 yards and have no deep safeties. Like, this is a concept that Brent Venables has used a lot, that the Saban tree has used. The basic framework, again, is like they have 5 guys to block, as I show in the picture. Like, I put a 5 against 6, right? So what you want to do is you want to occupy those 5 offensive linemen, but you're not going to keep rushing, right? You want them to engage you. You then drop. That frees up. Here, I think the design is to get Sonny Styles coming free up the middle. You get a free rusher, but you also then have guys dropping into like the hot routes, right? So if the quarterback's got an unblocked rusher in his face, he wants to get the ball out quick, and you have some guys there to deal with it. So that's the general concept. The problem, again, is in the execution. First of all, Ohio State, like Oregon, has this wide bunch set out here. Problems all day with handling, and this is like, we're going to talk about other issues they had when they were playing man coverage and the lack of diversity in how they play cover one. Have trouble handling these three bunch receivers here. They traded them off. You can see pre-snap at the bottom of the screen, which doesn't come into a factor, but Caleb Downs is telling David Igbinosa, like, you need to get on the inside receiver. They're communicating. Styles and Cody Simon are looking at each other. They seem somewhat confused. So the communication problems were evident throughout. Then on the execution, again, like, watch the defensive ends, watch the defensive tackles. The only person of those guys simulating pressure that engages with the actual offensive lineman is Lathan Ransom. None of the defensive line do what they're supposed to do. Now, again, like, that's a coaching issue. It's a different coaching issue than saying that Jim Knowles is running an unsound scheme. Obviously, this is not a good rep. Whether you put that on Knowles, on Larry Johnson as the defensive line coach, on guys just not doing what they did in practice in the moment. So the problem, though, is you don't get the unblocked rusher, because the offensive line, specifically the center, is able to, when he gets that fake from the defensive tackle who drops out right away, he can then redirect to Styles. So he doesn't get engaged. So you don't get the pressure. Then you get the situation. Now, Denzel Burke, again, bites on a double move. That was also an issue before. I didn't clip the first time he did that because it was a boring old cover 4 quarters coverage. Jim Knowles runs that it's like a super safe. We've talked about how it's like sort of his sort of conservative go-to, right? But like a corner still, if you're going to bite on a double move, there's no one to help you with that. So that happened twice here, obviously to really bad detriment. It's one thing to give up 20 to 30 yard explosive plays. It's another to give up 50, 40, 50, 60 yard touchdown explosive plays. I think that you could critique Knowles here for going to the well one too many times with these cover 0 concepts. And obviously Oregon adjusted, I think. But I think the concept here, again, is based on scouting. He's like, they're going to try to throw at the sticks. It's a minute and a half to go. We're trying to keep them out of field goal range. Let's try to get a stop. and get the ball back. And so I'm sure all those thoughts went into it. But I think again, it's emblematic of, it's not necessarily that they're doing things that no one's done before. It's just their execution issues evident in those schemes. But again, I think to your original point, to bring it all the way back, like, it is a little tough when I hear people complain that Ohio State's not generating pressure, but then they get mad when Jim Knowles uses different types of pressure schemes to generate pressure. And then they're like, well, why are you rushing your defensive ends? Like, but you're also complaining that those defensive ends aren't generating pressure. So like, if they can't win one-on-one, you need to do different things that generate pressure. There are ways that I think they could help them, again, by like stunting the defensive line as well, that they just don't do. But I don't have a problem with, simulated pressure, zone blitzes, fire zones. I think they need more of. It's just that they need to execute them better. And, part of it I fear is they wasted the first 3 weeks of the season not showing anything. And so now they just don't have game reps.
Well, they got plenty of game reps in cover one on Saturday. They saw them running that a bunch. And unfortunately, at times, Oregon also saw them running that a bunch and figured out ways to use some of the things that they do against them. So what did that look like on Saturday?
Yeah, I think we talked about this also last week. As I said, on the one hand, cover one's great for limiting RPOs because, in theory, you've taken away any conflict. You got your man, and the remaining players can play the run. Again, the problem is the devil's in the details. There are variations in cover one to try to limit some of these problems that I'm going to show you. And Ohio State just doesn't do them, or you don't see them. And so they can get exposed. It's not just that they can't, obviously Burke got beat, right? That wasn't in cover one, but like, that's like one way you beat cover one, right? Is you find the guy that your receiver's better than. But you also can do it by putting them by using these kind of plays that hurt them. So like, first play here, right? Like, this is Oregon gets the ball back after the Quinshon Judkins fumble. So they're at first play after that. They run this just basically in a outside zone with a slide threat, right? So they're like in two back personnel. So I guess, the first question is, was Ohio State really prepared for any kind of two back looks? But like, that happens, right? Like, I don't think but so because the way Ohio State has this designed is Cody Simon's responsible for the B gap, and Jordan Hancock, the nickel, has the C gap. Because that's just how Ohio State, we're going to talk about this again, like we've talked about it before. They set the nickel to the passing strength, and they don't mess with it no matter what kind of formation they see. But Jordan Hancock also has that, technically a fullback, really. He's just a wide receiver lined up in the backfield. When he releases on sort of this threat to the flat that they fake on play action, Hancock follows him. So now they have no player for the C gap. Maybe this is a bust, but I saw it twice. And so like, you need to do one of two things. Like, there are calls within cover one where when that receiver goes to the opposite side of the center, like Hancock basically could trade him off either to Sonny Styles as the will, could trade him off to the backside safety. Someone else on the other side of the field becomes responsible, so you like still have your gap integrity. Or I guess if Hancock's going to follow, then like the safeties need to roll down hard, and you're basically trading off the opposite way with like, the play side safety becoming the C gap player, the safety backside safety rotating up. But like, you just can't do this to yourselves over and over again. And so it's just like, they use lots of concepts, right? Like, we're going to talk about, like, I've seen them run cover one, I've seen them run cover four, quarter, half, cover three, but like, they don't have variation within any of them. So it makes it easier to exploit. And so like, that happens again on the Dylan Gabriel's touchdown run. So this is one that has like a couple of issues with it. So again, cover one. So we're gonna use the cover one with RPOs to put them in conflict. And so, the way they're aligned here, they actually are in what you can see I have it labeled as cheat. And so cheat is a concept where instead of Lathan Ransom as the deep safety be in the middle of the field, he's cheating towards the side that Gabriel would keep on. And this allows him to help play the quarterback run. So it's not like they're not doing anything, right? Like, again, they're aware of the situation. They're aware of the look. But as they're aligned here, Sonny Styles, and I'm sure JT Tumaloa thinks Sonny Styles has the quarterback as the edge player. But what they do is they run a little arrow route. Oregon does with the tight end. So he releases a flat, right? And so this is, again, you have essentially like a triple option. Like we talked about, Ohio State did this a few weeks ago, right? Where Devin Brown would keep and he could run or he could dump it out of the flat. So you have the same thing here. So Styles has to, again, cover one. Styles is responsible for the tight end. He has to play him to the flat, right? So the first issue here is like JT, when he feels unblocked, he needs to like recognize the situation he's in. I'm not saying it's an easy ask. Again, like these are good concepts from Oregon. It's well designed, but he has to feel that and slow himself down. Like he gets himself repeatedly caught. We've showed other examples of guessing and trying to make a play. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you get caught like this. The other issue is then like Latham Ransom, yes, like as the cheat, he's there to help principally with the pass threat, but like you got to get him down. You got to get Gabriel to the ground somehow, some way. Like, I hate to. Bad Latham Ransom showed himself, to be honest, on Saturday again. Like he's been really good, but like the missed tackles that we saw 2 years ago against Michigan, where they, where he's the lead lone deep safety, like you got to get someone to the ground. Like even if like take a less aggressive angle. Just too many missed tackles out of him on Saturday. Obviously, Caleb Downs, they liked to use him on, if they can, near the box to help shore up some of these issues. And like he made some great plays down there, but like on this play, he's near the box, so he cannot help. It certainly does not help Latham Ransom here either that Davidson Igbinosun is getting driven 10 yards down the field, which cuts off his path to really pursue Gabriel. And so you're just seeing like a combination, right? And like, obviously we're picking out bad plays here. I do think there are plays where like Ohio State, when they had the numbers, they did pretty well against the run. And it wasn't all bad, but when you put together this combination of like, you're in a scheme deficit and then you make mistakes within it, that's how you get these explosive plays against you.
All right. Well, you just talked a minute ago about how if the other team knows what's happening, they can kind of use it against you. Well, here's another example where Oregon was able to take what Ohio State does in certain coverages and make it work against them. This time, Jordan Hancock was the one who got kind of put in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah. And okay. So here we go. This is what I talked about. And I remember you asking me at the time, like, well, is this them being vanilla? I'm like, well, they did this against Missouri. They did this against Michigan. So it's just, there are reasons again. So to say it again, like Ohio State always sets the nickel to the passing to the field. How they define the field, if it's in the middle of the field, but like in here, if you're on the hash mark to the wide side, there are reasons to do it. I don't understand why you do anything all the time, regardless, right? Like you just have to change it up sometimes just to change it up. But so you get this formation into like Oregon puts formation into boundary, which just means they put their numbers to the short side of the field, right? So you got a trips to the boundary. And the result of that is that Sonny Styles walks out as the will because he's to that side. So he's now an apex. And now you have Jordan Hancock responsible for the B gap, right? Which is between the guard and the tackle. You can see it really well. I included the shot behind the defense as well. And now they play, I think, a cover three. It's sometimes hard to tell with run plays, whether it's cover one or cover three, because some kind of single high that allows Caleb Downs to roll down, right? So he's got the C gap. So you got Jordan Hancock for the B gap, Caleb Downs for the C gap between the outside the tackle, excuse me. And so when you have a puller here, or when this guy leads, the guard leads on Hancock, right? He has to fit inside of him. Downs fits on the other side of him. That's easier said than done when you're asking the nickel to get set inside of an offensive guard, right? And so Downs goes outside, Hancock's driven out of his gap, big gain. Again, like also not helped by the fact that Ty Hamilton on this play loses the A gap. and gets beat. Now, I will say, I think the defensive tackles overall had plenty of plays I could show you where they controlled the interior and they sort of made up for some of these scheme issues. So I don't think this is like an emblematic issue. I think those defensive tackles helped them. Like there were times where like you could tell the difference when they were down a body, but Tyleik Williams can close down that backside B gap and take away that like 2-gap issue we talked about for Cody Simon against Marshall. So, but again, this gets to like the unwillingness or refusal, whatever it is, to slant or stunt the defensive line most of the time it just kills them, because it makes it really predictable for the offense where the defensive line is going to be, and they can't take care of these issues. Like if you look from the behind the defense, like if Mitchell Melton just gets wide, set out wide, and it's just easy for the tackle to just push him out. Like if your nickel is set to the field like this, I think you should be checking we're going to pinch the defensive line, we're going to stunt, something that gets our bigger bodies inside to allow Jordan Hancock and Caleb Downs to play the football from outside in. There just have to be answers, and they just don't have enough of them. And that just leads to these issues where they can stop the run in what I would call fair fight, where they have the numbers, but they just have too many plays where they get gashed because of these scheme issues that they don't have answers or solutions to.
They did find some solutions eventually in the run game. One of the things that they did that worked was quarter, half, but as with pretty much everything on this show, well, he gave up 7.6 yards per play and 5 yards per rush. It didn't work forever. There's always a counter punch to your punch. So let's start with the good news on the quarter, half, and then you can get into the less good news.
Yeah. I didn't want to leave it totally again that it's the sky is falling, right? So I do think you saw more and more. So quarter, half, where you're playing this one, where you're playing cover 4 to the field and cover 2 to the boundary. You also saw them in response later in the game to some of those formation to boundary issues, playing half quarter or cover 8, which is when now you're playing cover 4 to the boundary and cover 2 to the field. To get, again, I think they're getting bodies and the safeties against the run to the short side with cover 8. But here, they do some of the things that I'd like to see them do, right? So the first thing about quarter, half is it's sort of in some ways like a single high cover 3 scheme, in that you have another defensive back in the run fit, but it still gives you some of the split safety benefits of like cover 4, keeping and cover 2 and keeping like 4 over 3 or 3 over 2. So it's a solid sort of workman scheme, right? But they also do what I just was saying. So like when you watch this play, you obviously have 2 wide receivers. You have 2 guys out wide for Oregon, right to the field, which is, Oregon RPO threat all over it. So Styles is sort of splitting the difference between the tackle and the receivers. And so what they do, rather than ask him, put him in that conflict, they spike JT Tuimoloau inside. Both defensive ends spike inside of the B gap. Now Styles can play the C gap. Jordan Hancock to the opposite side can play the C gap. You can, and you'll see on this play, they can basically string it out, right, by doing that. And so you'll see, as I said, they had quite a few run plays where they did limit Oregon. And especially like when the defensive tackles can control the line of scrimmage, like they do much better here. Here's a good rep from Ty Hamilton. He's resetting the line of scrimmage against the center when you can see from behind the play. Styles is able to string it out, and Cody Simon's able to come clean it up. So I think, and we can talk about this more, like part of my solutions within the framework of what we have, right? Like you're not going to change your entire scheme mid-scheme. I mean, I would like to see more of this, as I said, quarter, half concepts, more of cover 3, where you're bringing downs down, things that within the 4 down scheme that they single gap that they play, short of the jack coming out and short of Knowles doing the things he's done in the past with getting a gap and a half from defensive linemen, mixing up gaps. I just think they need to be gap sound to start with. And some of these schemes allow you to do it. And obviously the more that they can change up where the gaps that the defensive line is playing, like on this one, the more it's going to help them. I will say, though, that like there's other issues for them, right, on these zone looks. And maybe this is why they were playing so much cover one, because, again, these are all things we've talked about in the past that have been like issues. So it's not a surprise that a good team, the good coaching staff that is, I thought Will Stein was, he was they were reaching deep on Saturday, right? Oregon, like, especially in the second half. Like they ran the 4th down play where they slipped the tight end out of the backfield. They ran the 3rd and 6 against Ohio State's dime look. They ran a crack toss sweep to the boundary. Like these are pretty gutsy calls. And here you get sort of the Oregon, another variation of we're going to purposely put 12 men on the field. We're going to do an onside kick that tries to drill your up man in the stomach. Like Dylan Gabriel fakes like he's looking to the sideline for the play and they snap the ball, right? And so that's supposed to get you off guard. So, again, credit to Oregon or you could say like Oregon knew they had to pull out all the stops, how you want to look at it, right? But like this like deep breaking in route to the tight end here, you just like see too often against Ohio State's coverage because they don't carry receivers like we talked about. Like if someone releases vertical, they don't run with them in zone. They don't even reroute them. So like, here, Cody Simon kind of pushes the tight end. I mean, I think you would want to see a more aggressive reroute, but I know they don't want to do that because they don't want to lose their like zone integrity. So I know that it's not like that's not on Steinman. That's like the scheme, but like they just have the deep safeties there and they're just green grass. And so Dylan Gabriel played a really good game Saturday. Like I thought he made throws that frankly, like I was impressed with. I didn't know if he had some of those in him. So credit to him, but I do think that the Ohio State scheme at times allows opposing quarterbacks to get comfortable because they know what the picture is. They know where their reads are and they can get into a rhythm. And again, like you just got to close down on these routes. And so I'm not saying that playing quarter, half, or any particular concept is going to be a total panacea. Because I just think there's a series of systemic issues that go together. I just think at a minimum, you kind of have to go back to like we can't give up those big explosive plays. And we're going to, in the second half, it certainly wasn't perfect. I mean, Oregon had long drives, but they didn't give up the big plays. They forced a couple field goals. They forced the 4th down on downs. I certainly thought it was a better performance in the second half than the first. They seemed more comfortable getting lined up. I just think you have to come up with ways, again, to like, you got to have all your gap integrities covered. So that to me is like, you got to use more single high zone concepts. You got to remove these man beater conflicts. You need to come up with as many ways as possible to allow Caleb Downs to be your answers because like he did, erase a lot of problems for them on Saturday to the extent he could. Like he can't be everywhere at once, obviously, but I think that he can clean up a lot of things in the box. And then, I just think on the one hand, I don't think the sky is falling out, right? Like they're still a top 5, top 10 defense. I just think they are limited by some of these scheme choices in terms of their ceiling. And I just think that means that in games like this, you're going to have to score at least 30 plus. If I'm Dan and Chip Kelly, like I'm going into a game in Oregon thinking I need to score 35 the next time to win. But I do think there's things they can do. As I said, these things, moving the line around, that I think they can clean some of this stuff up. And obviously, like, I don't know whether it was overconfidence, whether it was just film study. I've seen Oregon throw a lot of short routes. Like, you can't have your corners doing that kind of stuff on double moves.
Well, we will see whether the Buckeyes can clean some of that stuff up. We will also see whether Ryan Day and Chip Kelly can put up 35 points, and the next time they have a significant game like this, we're going to be talking about the fact that they put up 31 points. Pretty good, pretty close. Not quite enough, but pretty close. We talk about the offense the next time. We always do the offense first. The defense feels like it has been the story for good or for ill this week in Columbus, so started with them this week. I'll be back, have Ross back to talk about the offense next time. But for now, I want to thank our sponsors, Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus, check out the menu, and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.